Yay. Hi, everyone. My name's Dill.
Woo! Hi, Dill.
Cool. So, like I said, my name's Dill. For those of you who don't know me, how dare you?
Who are you?
Cool. So, immediately, my computer doesn't know what I'm talking about. Cool. So I'm Dill. This is me. And today, we're going to be doing a talk on... Oh, will it work? Yeah, it will. React Hooks 101. Yay. Okay, so show of hands, how many people do React here? Cool, that is overwhelmingly most people. Awesome. And keep your hands up if, if you guys have heard of React Hooks. Cool, a lot of hands stayed up. Awesome. So as we all know, or as most of us know, React Hooks have, or over the years, a lot of work's been put into giving React developers top-down data flow between components. It's kind of like the big thing that React does. But sometimes, and a lot more as applications grow in complexity, that can become kind of an issue. So we wrangle with complex bits of code, and we've tried like 5 different patterns at this point to get this down. And now, here's a 6th. So this is React Hooks. To quote Dan Abramov, hooks apply the React philosophy, explicit data flow, and composition inside of a component, rather than just between components. So instead of...
Zoom in a bit if you can.
Oh, I can do that.
Okay, never mind. Don't worry about it. Sorry.
Okay.
It's not too old. Code's kind of hard to read too.
Okay. So we run into these problems every day with animations and form handling and managing external data sources. I struggle with forms a lot. That's a big problem in my day-to-day because form logic can be really, really tricky in React. With hooks, some advantages we find include awesome minification. Minification's a good word. So people have reported bundle sizes down to like 30% of what they were originally dealing with because classes minify horribly. Hooks are super easy to read, as we will see shortly. And they're just regular JavaScript functions. So they're really, really easy to reason about. The catch is that they can only be top level for a couple of reasons that I won't get into now, but might get into in part 2, Electric Boogaloo. And they're also only available in functional components. So you can't use them in classes, but why would you want to? So with that, let's look at some code. Some code. Okay, so this is slightly larger. So this is a regular React class component. So just going through really quickly line by line. So we're taking in React DOM and components and fragments, making an app with state set to count 0. We have a set count function specifically for raising the count as an event of some type. On component did mount, we can see, you can't see, but I can see up here in the title of the document, it says how many times a button has been clicked. And we have something rendering this, which should also be bigger. Cool. Let's make this into hooks because it will look much nicer soon. So first, I am going to get rid of component because we won't be extending from that anymore. But I will bring in 2 really cool APIs, one called use effect and one called use state. Quickly change this into a function. Okay, so line by line, first thing we're going to want to do is get rid of state. Not entirely, but we're going to replace it with the use state hook. So we can say const array destructure count and set count as a nice handy reference. equals useState. And we'll just give it an initial value of 0. So right off the bat, this exposes a nice handy reference to state that lives inside of the component itself, so we don't have to worry about any complex management. Now, on its own, this doesn't look like a lot, but it gets way cooler. So that means we can immediately get rid of this.state in our document itself, and it means we can get rid of this in front of setCount and actually give it a value. So in this case, I'll do count plus 1. Oh, so you can't use lifecycle methods inside of React Hook components. So for now, we're just going to comment these out. We will come back to that in a second. But oh, right. There we are. Nope, there we are not. OK, why is it angry at me? Object is not a function. Oh, you know what, guys? I screwed up. I forgot to set. OK, so this raises a really good point. React hooks are only available in the alpha channel of React. And I forgot to add that to my project. So I'm going to do that really quickly. Yikes, that was unexpected. OK, full disclosure, I won't be able to show you the actual application because I made a mistake. But ignoring this, I will show you the code.
This is a code snippet of the article.
Why don't you just try npm having it just so that it'll
That's a good point. OK, thank you, Connor, for the quick debugging tip.
just npm I instead of yarn add.
Still using it.
Or that, sure.
Cool.
Even shorter.
Yes, aliasing is good and cool.
Just gonna take forever. That's all.
Yeah, that's fine.
Might take a minute. OK, you know what? I will just show you the effects of hooks. So we can do that with useEffect, this second so far unused API. So we can do that really easily by using useEffect. So this is what the finished code looks like. I am sorry to everyone that I cannot show you because NPM is still not working. OK, NPM issues aside, this is React hooks in a nutshell. And you can read my blog post for more. Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. Cool. Any questions?
Is your Wi-Fi on?
It is.
Try turning off mode.
Sam.
I'm very confused. So setCount, you're calling it, where is it defined?
So setCount is actually defined in this little array destructure right here.
Yeah.
So React hooks is smart enough to know that if you pass it the reference count for whatever state object is in state now, and you reference setCount as just something that can do something to that state, then you can call it anywhere. And I mean, we could make setCount do basically anything we want in this logic right here. We just pass it.
So you could say like x, set x, and then replace it like that?
Sure, yeah, it's able to use arbitrary values depending on what you're doing. So
How is
for
it pulling in the name of what you're defining, or you're declaring the variable, how is it pulling that in from useState?
what do you mean?
So you're calling it set, or count, setCount, and apparently it's using that to determine how to set up this function of setCount.
Yes, so right now we're just passing
So set
Is the
across
compiler
array.
determining what it's setting right
How
now?
does it work?
So I don't know how it works under the hood. We can talk about that next time. That's a really good question, though. I think that question requires a much deeper dive.
So if I like, instead of count at like page, I could set page?
Absolutely, you could. Yeah.
So based on that convention, they just...
Is it convention? Is it
definitely-
literally the word
It's a
state
convention.
that's critical, or is it that they're both equal to the same?
It's just that they're equal to the same thing. These are really just references in the useState API. So you could say count set foo. Yeah, and it would still work.
This has to be the compiler doing this because useState has no idea of what you're defining this array tuple
I
as.
think there's a
Why-
API
why?
for it.
How else would useState, if it's determining this should be count and this function should be set count, I don't see how it could pick that up other than using a compiler to.
So
I think it knows that it's the second argument.
Yeah.
Oh,
array,
okay.
and
Yeah, so
One
it's-
is the variable and the second one is
Yes.
the function to set it.
Yeah, so by
Okay.
using array destructuring, you can say count and set count, and then it knows to put the two together.
Right, sorry, I thought it was determining you could set like a 10 size array and.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
fair enough.
okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't
no,
quite
it'll just be a
understand.
first and second.
The
yeah.
point here is the first one is the setter and the second, the first one is the getter and the second one is the setter.
Sure, yeah, that's a fair way of looking at it.
Yes, I've got it.
So yeah, so two questions. So is this related to the context API at all? Is this
Completely different.
meant
No,
to be used
but
with that, or
but you
completely
can.
different?
There are tons of different hooks that you can use. So use context is one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot show you that today.
So is use
but-
use effect?
Yeah, so
a keyword that's
use effect is.
specific to hooks, or
It is. So yeah. So use effect and use state are both hook specific keywords. So use state lets you hook into state directly.
Right.
Use effect lets you use lifecycle methods without actually using lifecycle methods. So before we had component did mount and component did update.
yeah.
Now we can just use effect to directly use the browser API to change the document title without having to use those lifecycle methods directly.
So if you in a functional component, you don't have access to the lifecycle method. So this is giving you that access.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So sorry, just a quick follow up. So I'm more used to kind of React Redux, and one of the main things that led me to using Redux instead of just like vanilla React is this. It's not necessarily that it's top down. It's kind of dealing with almost sibling components.
Yeah.
So oftentimes what happens is you have two components at the same level, and you want to kind of like pass some information from one to the other. In vanilla React, what you do is you pass it up and then down again to the other sibling. But
Yes.
with Redux, it gives you this kind of like these global kind of state management tools that lets you, through reducers and actions, send something through that then the other component can pull without having to interact with that top level component per se, right? So
Okay.
I'm kind of wondering how this would live in that sort of context. Like, say this component lived at the same level as a sibling. Is there a life cycle way using hooks to kind of communicate between them, or are you still stuck in that same problem of passing up and then down?
Sort of. So it's a little bit of a different architectural pattern now that we're looking at. And because they're still in the alpha channel, people have been playing with these a lot, but we haven't quite established exactly where that is going to live yet. But one pattern I've seen a lot is pulling in functional components that use hooks to manage their own internal state as you need it.
Okay.
So each component is like its own kind of atomic thing
Okay.
that has the ability to handle its own state.
Its own
Okay.
state, but it still needs to communicate. Like, it's still a component in the same JSX tree that is eventually going to have to communicate its state to another component.
Yeah.
Which is still handled using either Redux or the new context API, which is
Right. So that's where the context is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't
Okay,
think, I don't
okay.
think hooks is meant to solve the sibling
Yeah.
to sibling
Gotcha.
communication.
Hooks
No.
Okay,
is
cool.
moving away from like weird pseudo object oriented to purely functional.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're incredibly declarative, as you can see. Valentin?
This might have already been answered.
Okay.
But it talks to the point of like how might you use this in a larger scale replacement for Redux, and I guess that the answer is this is not a replacement for it.
It's not, but I would say use Apollo instead. So.
You started this talk with saying that there's like 6 different or 5 different state management things,
Yeah.
and you said this is a 6th different one. I thought that you were talking about like the problems of like managing state across component boundaries. But I guess this is just internally within a component a new way to,
Yes.
to manage state. Okay.
Yeah.
So the only point of this is to get rid of classes as they are much, as they like implemented class-specific methods which are heavy.
So it's
So
not.
Wouldn't that problem go away as soon as the S5 is dead? Finally?
Okay, 1, that's a big assumption to make. 2, classes aren't going away. Classes aren't even being deprecated. Like I've got my own personal problems with JavaScript classes, but these are just a different way of doing things, and they're a much more declarative way of doing things, which is, I think, what the React team is going for. So instead of having to use React classes, and instead of having these really bulky, fat classes that can pick up a lot of baggage over time, especially at scale, this is a much more functional, direct way of implementing your code.
Okay, so particularly with the use effect, and I guess this whole function, there's no sort of declaration of I'm dependent on count. So this looks like it's going to re-execute the entire process. Yeah, but again, you're saying use effect, here's some arbitrary function, and it's going to redo that every time set count is set, right?
Yeah, every time the component re-renders use effect will create a new anonymous function. And you're going to run out of memory at some point?
No, so I mean, it will just trigger a re-render the same way updating state triggers a re-render now.
But normally it's like it's contained within some subtree of the entire DOM structure, or like the render components of React, right?
Well,
and this is gonna re-render re-compute all this stuff every single time, is it not?
I mean, that's how React already
Is it different?
Yeah, well, so the use effect is a substitute for the lifecycle component. So like on mount or like did.
Yeah, but that only updates when you're updating the attributes of that specific component. This is gonna I don't see any.
So
use
this
effect is a global function, and it's just saying, here's a function you should re-execute.
Yeah, so this is inherently tied to its own internal logic and state management. So it will only update the component when count is updated. So it won't re-render.
How does it know that?
So because it's pulling in count right here.
But this is an anonymous function. There's no way to determine that from like where you're declaring it.
I'm not sure I know what you
It's
mean.
also set as the constant on there, so it might just be recognizing
Yeah,
the usage of that, right?
Yeah, so count is within scope of use effect, but if you declared a constant inside of use effect, it wouldn't be usable outside, just because of the way it's lexically scoped.
But if I'm executing, let's say I set whatever, how do I know which functions to call that are defining themselves under use effect? Right? There's no way to know this is specific to count, and therefore I would need to reprocess the whole thing.
That's a good question. I do not know.
Okay, maybe you want to chat about it after.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.